Welcome. We've got Dave Swartz here from McLanahan Engineering.
Hi, how you doing?
And he's going to give us a run through on the sand reclamation system that he's got for both a scrape system and a sand system. So here at World Dairy Expo 2022, it's a fantastic facility, awesome to see. Away to you, Dave.
Hi, so I'm going to go through a scrape manure system from McLanahan. So basically, all the scrape manure from your dairy will be put into a reception pit, and from that point we would meter it into our sand separator, which is here behind me. So the way that the sand separator works is through dilution. So every gallon of manure, sand manure that is mixed with a gallon of recycled water. We're looking at maybe 3 to 4% or less total solids in that water. So our equipment is based off of settling, where when you mix those two together, the sand will settle. We will auger it out very slowly to dewater it, and then what you can do is stack it, dewater it some more, and then it's ready for reuse within a week or two, depending on what sand type and how you stack it. So from here, we take the manure, we separate it. Like I said, you get one stream of sand. Now you have fine sand, water, and manure that bypasses this primary separation process. At that point, we will go over and run it through a cyclone. So cyclones have no moving parts in them, they're rubber lined, and they take out the smaller fraction of the fines out of that manure stream. So at this point, like I said, we have water, manure, and fine sand. So we're eliminating that fine sand part of it. So we're ready to go on to the next part of it in our closed loop system to produce good, clean, quality sand for the cows. So coming off of the cyclone, we will put it through some type of solid separation process where we take out the heavy solids, get it down to a fraction of maybe 3 to 4% recycled water that we can reuse back into our sand separation process. So that's what we call our closed loop system. And at that point, you have a solids stream and a sand stream. The solid stream can be taken one step further if you want to press out the solids and possibly use them for another part of your dairy, or spread them out to fields that may be further away that are harder to pump liquids to, or we can combine those back together and send them to a digestion company. So that's basically a closed loop sand separation system for a scrape dairy or vacuum truck. And the next part, we'll talk about sand lane cleanup or straight flush dairy systems. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to handle flush system for a sand bedded dairy. So some of the things that we've come across are using cyclones. Cyclones, separators, hydrocyclones, we kind of call them all the same thing. So we've been using cyclones as our primary separation on a lot of these flush or flush flume systems. The way this works is, so you flush an alleyway, so you have a certain amount of volume. We need to process that amount of volume before the next flush comes into the tank. So if you have, say, 20,000 gallons of flush manure, we size the cyclones depending on that amount and how much time we have before the next cycle. So these cyclones are rubber lined. They are fed with a pump that's either rubber lined or a vertical pump. We just need a certain head, a certain flow. So we pump up to it. We got sand coming out the bottom. We got what's left over coming out the top, which is both water and manure. So at that point, that water and manure will go on to the next process, solid separation or back to storage. But the sand coming off the cyclone still has some suspended solids and some dirty water, dirty fiber material in it. So I'd say it's like 80% sand, 20% everything else. At that point, we will drop it into a screw washer. At this point, this becomes a screw washer just to polish up the sand. So this acts very similar to a sand separator, which we discussed in the earlier video, but here we're just polishing sand, so we're using a lot less water in this process. Most of this water is basically off the spray bar at this point, so we're just polishing sand. Sand drops into the wash box. The wash box is filled with recycled water. It's carried up the screw. As it's carried up the screw, it is dewatered. And once it gets to the top, we just discharge it. And at that point, we can either discharge it onto a flat pad, or we could go to the next process, which is dewatering. We have a piece of equipment called a dewatering screen. And they come in multiple sizes depending on the volume of sand that we need to process. So the dewatering screen is basically, let's put it in terms of a shaker box. So you put this in, the sand comes out maybe 20% moisture. It drops in, shakes its way through the machine, and we remove half the moisture. At that point, it drops off into a stack pad. And since we have removed half the moisture, your turnover time with sand, recycled sand, is basically cut in half. So if you were stacking sand for 4 to 5 weeks, now we're stacking it for maybe a week to week and a half, and that reduces your stack pad, which reduces your runoff. Now that pad is a lot smaller, and you have less runoff, which now reduces the size of your manure storages, or required for manure storages. So that's a quick run through of our flush system that's available from the McLanahan system.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Does that
Dave.
work okay?